You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewell. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.
All right. Welcome to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ewell, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 ways cold plunge improves your health. So as we get into today's episode, I started doing cold plunges about 60 days ago, maybe a little bit more. And through these last 60 to 75 days, I've done cold plunge. I went 38 days straight, and then I began to kind of do every other day. But I want to talk not only about, the top 5 ways that they improve, maybe from the perspective of, the studies and things like that, but also the perspective of like what I've noticed. And so, rather than sit there and just quote the same exact things that all these studies quote, I'm going to go through mine. So I did a podcast a little bit ago. I think it was right around 30 days in. I wanted to do another one because it's been over 60 days. I feel like I have a pretty good idea of like what way I feel like it works best, but I'm going to go through these. So inside of our program, Habit-Based Lifestyle, we have 5 power pillars of health. You got a physical health, mental, relational, spiritual, and then we got financial health. These 5 areas can be dramatically impacted by what we do on a day-to-day basis with our morning routine, with our evening routine. But I want to go through the specific areas of health that I've saw an initial major adjustment. So number 1 is I'm going to start with mental health, because I feel like this is an area that, there's a lot of physical things that we can improve on by doing cold plunge, but we don't talk about mental health enough. And so I'm going to do a couple things. So number 1, the initial thing I noticed right away when doing cold plunge was how, easily debatable it was. What I mean by that is, you could sit there and be like, oh, I don't want to do it. You could kind of procrastinate. But the more that you did those things, the more that you began to kind of think about how cold it was going to be. You began to think about, the pain of doing it. And in that, often, had me procrastinating, often had me kind of like waiting around to do things. And so as I kind of learned and walked through that, after about 8 to 10 times in, I started to recognize that pattern, and then I immediately would get in and just get it over with. And what you found is the fear or the pain of what we would say in our mind was worse than actually just getting in and beginning to do it. And so number 1 thing that I began to see is I began to kill procrastination. I began to kill the story in my mind that it was worse than it actually was. And so that number 1 thing began to help me take action. It began to help me, when that voice came up, it began to help me kind of shut that down right away. And so taking action was one of the first things that it started helping me with, was just recognizing that voice and then immediately beginning to take action. Second thing is, as you get into the cold plunge, one of the things that you have to recognize is like, you can't get in halfway, because if you get in halfway or you dip your toe in, it gets way colder, it gets way worse. And so you just kind of have to get in. And so the second thing that I saw that it began to improve was my stress resilience. What do I mean by that? As soon as you get in and you immediately get down to kind of like your chest height and closer to your neck, you begin to have this shortness and kind of like this contraction of stress. Like you can't breathe. And some of you guys know what I'm talking about. Maybe you get in the shower, or maybe you get in to something cold and it's like you can't breathe. It's almost like you're choking on air. But one of the things that I started to notice was, as soon as I felt that, I immediately started to focus on my breath. And so breath work was something that I immediately started to recognize, it's like, hey, how fast can I actually find my breath? And so, there was times where, maybe 50 seconds in was when I really started to see myself calm down. Then as I began to progress and do it more and more, it would take 5 to 10 seconds. I would immediately find my breath and begin to focus on that. And so really breath work and stress resilience began to go hand in hand. Also, there's times throughout the week where maybe I'm higher stressed, and I could tell because my body would actually get colder and I would have a hard time catching my breath, or it might take a little bit longer than that 10 seconds. And my body would immediately feel that stress. And so I immediately began to felt that. Now, as I began to do that, I started to feel myself just be, calmer on a day-to-day basis, And so one of the things that you recognize is that if you're improving your stress resilience, things tend to not impact you as much. Also, maybe you have stressful situations come up throughout the day. What you can always do is just focus on breathing for 1 to 2 minutes to kind of calm your system down. Remember this is that our nervous system a lot of times is impacted very much by stress. So the more that we can learn how to manage that, and when it comes in, we can manage it into where it doesn't impact us the same as it once did. And so 60 days later, 70 days later, I don't notice, the stress as much as maybe I used to, or I carry it much different. So that's the second thing. Now, the other piece of this is, for me, it's kind of like I find that breath that takes me into about the first minute, 32 minutes. And then I start really kind of getting into this meditative state to where it's no longer cold. I don't even really feel the cold. To go 5 minutes now is like nothing. But I've also found that going 7 minutes or going 9 minutes does the exact same thing as going 5 minutes. And so the only difference between the 5 and 9 is just the time, but I haven't really noticed any difference on my body or any difference in how I feel. But the one thing I will say is it's helped me kind of get into a meditative state where I've been able to pray, been able to do some of these other things that really help with mental health. It's like just having that laser focus, not on the water being cold, but just being able to be in a place where you're not really thinking about anything, like your mind's clear. You're just kind of in that meditative state, and even there's times when I began to pray in that place, and really it's just helped me kind of have that focus of just emptying everything out and just being able to focus on just the one thing. And it goes back to, breath work. If I get out of that state, I can always breathe and get back in. If I get distracted, I can always breathe and get back into it. And so these first three things are going to be a specific focus on mental health. I want to go into physical health. Obviously, inflammation, recovery, all those benefits I've really started to notice, like joints ache. I don't notice any joint aches, joint pain, any of those things where, those might be coming up maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, but like I really feel like my body is fully recovered. My body has no, aches, pains, any of those things. And so that's, recovery is something I've noticed. I've also noticed that I've been able to sleep, 40 minutes, 45 minutes more in the evening. And typically it represents like more of a deep or REM sleep from it. And so the physical side of it is it much quicker recovery, much quicker, just less joint pain, things like that. And so I've really noticed my recovery speed up, and that's been, that's always great, right? The more we can be recovered, the more that we can, work out, the more that we can do other physical things, but that's just another thing. And then the last piece of this is really going to go to physical, mental, and I'm going to say energy. So, I don't know if you know this, but like, when I get out of the cold plunge, or even if, you're someone who does cold showers, one of the biggest things, man, is like having the energy when you get out of that. So like a 5-minute cold plunge gives me just energy off the charts, to where literally the energy is so amazing. It's like drinking 5 or 6 shots of coffee, but without, the buzz of caffeine, but just the buzz of just, man, you're like feeling awake. And so, my energy level, that seems to carry me for the first like 4 or 5 hours of the day. You can really feel that. And that's an amazing feeling to have. And so my energy has been completely different. It's been off the charts. And, that exposure, really gives me that. I look forward to that energy that I get from it. And I don't know too many things that can actually give you that. And so I want to go back through this, because I think if we're talking about bang for our buck, and I'm, inside of habit-based lifestyle, we're always focused on habits that give you a lot of bang for your buck. So I've talked about walking and how important I think, walking 10,000 steps a day, but it's not just the walking 10,000 steps a day. It's being able to stack so many other habits with walking, that just this one habit really has like 6 that improve your overall, health, improve your overall body. You think of it kind of like working out, right? When we work out, we get endorphins, we get more energy, we begin to just feel different. Well, cold plunge is kind of in that same category of, hey, I just went through 5 ways that this can improve, mental health, physical health, but also spiritual health. And then we're talking about how that carries over into your business, how that carries over into your relationships. But this 1 5-minute session, I don't know anything else that can give you this much benefit. And yes, there's all the science of like, hey, increase testosterone, increase all these things. I actually want to begin to get tested, some blood work done, so that I can see an improvement there. But without getting into any of the scientific stuff that, they talk about with cold plunge, I'm just talking from experience. Like this 5-minute session, I don't know anything that you can do in 5 minutes that would give you this much benefit as cold plunge. And I think that's really the true power in what we're doing. It's not about, how cold can you get it? It's not about how long you can stay in it. It's really about the consistency of it. And I found that this 1 5-minute session has so many benefits to it that, this is a complete game changer in my morning routine, and really has allowed me to take, my mindset, my physical health, and all these other areas to the next level inside of our power pillars of health. So maybe, you guys are wondering, hey, like, where do I actually get these? Which one did you get? Like, I'll say this, like, it's very competitive right now, to where you can get a cold plunge for a couple $1,000s. You don't have to have the ice. I will tell you, I used to have it with the ice. Major deterrent. I might get a couple days in at a time. Now there's no ice. You have the chiller, you have all those things. So it's a complete game changer in what we're doing. But this is one of the best habits that I've added in the last, easily the last year, outside of walking, which was something I added in 2022 that I really, even today, still continue to do. But this is a game changer in your morning routine. And I highly recommend that you do this, especially as a business owner, especially with the stress that we deal with, and just learning how to manage it. So if you guys want to know more about this, maybe you're watching this on YouTube, maybe you're listening to the podcast on Apple, whatever that is, hit me up. Let me know, maybe you want to talk about this. Maybe you have some more in-depth questions about cold plunge. Hit me up, Jesse at habit-basedlifestyle.com. You can also check out our Facebook group. You can see that in the show notes. You can get the direct link. You can also follow me on Instagram, Jesse, JESS.EWELL, or you can check out the video episode on YouTube. Go over there, subscribe. We'd love for you to follow us. But until next episode, have a great day.
You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewell. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.